Hello and welcome back to another episode of what it's like to winter in Antarctica at Rothera Research Station. These interviews are conducted live from Antarctica. I'm your host, Nadia. Today we will hear from Joe Clay, the overwintering generator mechanic. Joe Clay, thank you very much for joining me on the Ice World podcast. Would you like to introduce yourself?
My name's Joe Clay. I'm a generator mechanic in Rothera.
And how long have you been a generator mechanic in Rothera for?
Coming up for about 10 months now. So arrived here 23rd December 21 and it is, October.
So let's go back to the start. What inspired you to apply to a job in Antarctica?
The biggest thing that inspired me was my old captain on my ships. He said he used to sail around these areas and he said it was amazing. Like the best views he's ever seen, glaciers left, right and centre. And he said he's loved nothing more than being around ice. So I heard about it. And do you know when something just gets in your head and you just get,
like
it just
fixated.
keeps nibbling at it. And I was like, you know what, fine, I'll do it. Put my application in and here we are.
That is amazing. What age were you when you were on the ship and you met this captain?
22.
And what was your role on the ship?
I was a third engineer. So basically just doing what I do in Rothera, but just on ships.
And in the hull?
Yeah.
Like
so, under the waterline.
Under the waterline,
that's
it.
Yeah, that was me. So,
right. How did you get into that? How did you get into working on ships? What's your background? What did you do at school?
My background at school was a lot of engineering. Wasn't very good at much else, but I knew what I liked. I knew what I was good at. Stuck to engineering, and then all my family are seafarers, either Navy, RAF, RFA, Merchant Navy, stuff like that. So all of them, like I've got aunties, uncles, cousins. So I was aiming for the Royal Navy at first, but that didn't plan out. Well, I was too young and my mum wanted to go as an officer, so I had to go to college first.
Your mum wanted you to go in?
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
So I showed up one day at home with a big, so they give you like this inch thick application form for the Royal Navy. So I showed up, I was like, Mum, I filled it all out, I just need your signature. She was like, absolutely no way. No way. And it was, like I said, I was rubbish at everything at school, so I was terrible at English. So it took us days just so I had nice handwriting and all that. I was like, pardon? She was like, nope, you're going to college. If you're going in the Royal Navy, you're going to be an officer. Okay, yeah, fine, right, whatever. So I wanted to go straight in from school.
Yeah.
So anyway, I got to college, chose mechanical engineering, stuff like that in college, but I just didn't really like it, was bored, so I quit. I managed to get a cadetship in the Merchant Navy and just took off from there, loved it. First lesson I was in, ships, just completely took over my life. And then I was there from, till last year.
What was it that captured you so much?
I just really like understanding how things work. So there's always like something in my head that if I don't understand it, it really bugs me. So engines, they're everywhere. And then the beauty of marine engineering is it covers all bases. So you learn about from electrical engineering to plumbing to engines to pumps, everything. On that ship, you should be capable of fixing it. So I went to it, just stuck to it, and it just kept every lesson. It was crazy because I wasn't really interested in school, but that was
like practical
incredible.
knowledge, and it just grasped you.
It was amazing.
As part of the college, were you able to do quite a lot of work experiences so you could actually work with engines?
So what they do is, even in college, we had the big marine diesel engines and all that you could take apart, work on and stuff. But part of the cadetship is you spend a year at sea. So over the space of 3 years, you're meant to spend like 10 months at sea. So you give you a company, or a company hires you, and you go away, do your time on ship, and then come back to college, and be like, oh yeah, this is what I learned and all that, and then you carry on with the education, and you go back to sea, learn a bit more.
That is so good to split
it's
it
a
up
really
in
good way
between.
of doing it.
So then at the end of that, you get your ticket as
third engineer.
And what's the first job?
Offshore supply vessels. So sea and just a lot of sea, which I loved. I was all for it. But eventually I outgrew it and thought Rothera was the plan.
So how long were you spending at sea at a time?
Just 4 weeks. I was lucky, so if you speak to other marine engineers, they go away for like 6 months. 6 months on, 6 months off, but I would have just stagnated if I did that. And then during my 6 months off, I would just got bored. So I did 4 weeks on and 4 weeks off. Really good, really lucky to get the job. And the best thing about it, you got the same crew every time. Became just like a family, like Rothera, just like a family. Seeing the same people again, and it was incredible, honestly.
How many people were part of your team?
12. All
on one ship?
Yeah.
That's it?
Yeah, that's it.
But how big's the ship?
63 metres, I think it was.
12 of you are responsible. That's including captain?
Yeah, everyone. That's everyone on the ship.
Thought being here was pretty hardcore.
So we didn't go too far. I did like the southern section of the North Sea. I've been up to Grenna in Europe.
So supply vessel, you're providing resources?
Yeah,
To
so oil rigs mainly, which is a bit different of a field from here. So we provided fuel, water, food for them.
Interesting.
I mainly supplied the decommission vessels. There was one called Sea Fox 4, was the one I was looking after. And it would come along, jack up next to an oil rig and decommission it. So it would take it all away, make sure it was nice, clean and tidy, and then sail on. And then we used to follow that around.
Wow, so you are following the mothership around?
Which goes around and takes apart the oil rigs.
It kind of blows my mind. It's such a job that's world apart.
It's very different.
That's where you met that captain?
Yeah.
Do you have any apprehensions about coming to Rothera for 18 months? Because you're used to 4 weeks on, 4 weeks off.
Yeah. So I remember the best part about that is, like I usually do, I didn't really think much about it. Chuck my application in, see what happens. I did that, and then I got the interview. And then once I got the interview, my family sort of picked up about it and like, well, what would you actually be doing? I was like, and I don't know. So I Googled it again. I was like, I'm going to be away for 18 months. And they were like, like month on, month off sort of thing, like same again. I was like, no, I don't think so. They were like, that can't be. There's no way. 18? No way. You'll get back in 2023. I was like, yeah, I think so, yeah. And so found out for certain. So I talked to HR at Bass. I was like, so it's 18 months straight, isn't it? They're like, yeah. All right, yeah, okay. No problem.
Was there a little bit in your stomach that was like, what have I decided?
No. So I was like, yeah, 18 months. I'm like,
how old are you at this point?
I was 23 then.
23?
Yeah.
So that's pretty young.
22, 23. But yeah, the apprehension with the job is the same with any new job, really. It's always like, will I be able to get into it? And luckily enough,
will you enjoy it? Will you not have that kind of like imposter syndrome?
Exactly.
Am I good enough?
I got massive imposter syndrome first getting here.
Did you?
Massive, yeah.
I've heard quite a few people say that actually.
But it's just, specifically to my job, it was just walking into it in whole new systems. So my old ships were like 40-year-old, really analogue systems, like old analogue gauges and stuff like that. It just made sense, but this is all computerised. So it was just sort of like we're walking into a new world.
Was it like walking into the future?
Yeah. It really, I was like, I didn't even know this could be a thing. Like, what?
Wow.
I just start engines from over here on a laptop. It was really cool.
Have you got any experience of working with digitised stuff before?
None.
From college? Like, literally none?
Zero.
So you're starting a completely new skill set?
Yeah.
That's cool.
So I walked in and was like, right, it's either learn it or fail here. They did provide a course on it, but it's like you go on a course and then just forget everything about it. So it's just get used to it, get going with it, and then see how it goes. But luckily enough, I think I've done all right.
Yeah. I can't verify. Do you think that a lot of it was self-learning, or did you have quite a decent handover period?
So I arrived quite late in the season. I didn't get much of a handover period, so a lot of it was off my colleague and just self-learning, really. When something goes wrong, you go, right, better see if that's a setting first. Unfortunately, we've had pretty big issues, but we've learned how to get around it on the computer and stuff.
So tell me about the generators. How many do we have, and what is the role of the generators?
We have 4 generators on station, 4 main generators that provide electricity for all buildings throughout station.
The gen shed
Yeah.
is the only hub that provides power to the whole station. So without that hub, we're dead.
Well, yeah, thanks for the
Probably.
pressure.
I just want to get to the listeners how important your job is.
That's, again, it's one of those things that you've got to get used to, but I think I had a nice little part on ship with it, because it's sort of the same thing on a ship, so I wasn't so alienated with the concept.
Parts are still the same, and the maintenance, for example, is that all quite similar?
Yeah, it's very similar. So generators on ships, the same here, except you're on solid land, which is quite nice.
How many generators did you have on your ship? That ship that you were on?
4.
So you
They
used
are
4
quite
needy
important. Yeah.
things.
Yeah, it is. At some point, it's like having kids.
So what does your day-to-day look like?
It's a lot of checking the generators, weirdly enough. When I first get in the morning, the classic job, check emails and then go about. And we have something called a log, where we check all the temperatures and pressures of the generator at that particular moment. So just go make sure they're all nominal, record it down for future. If something goes wrong, we can go, it was at this set. And then after that, see what maintenance needs done. We're currently rebuilding an engine, so what is required in that job is you take the engine and take it back completely. Just
Every
everything.
single component.
Everything out of it. So you've got something called a bare block. I guess you could like it to a skeleton of the engine.
Yeah.
And then you have to take it apart, get all new pieces, clean it really well, and then put them all back together again. And if you get anything wrong, it'll blow up, which isn't ideal. It's what I enjoy doing. It's fun. So we've been spending a lot of time on that, and then with summer coming up, spending a lot of time with handbag generators. So they're just little, small handbag generators that provide a small amount of electricity for the science around Antarctica. Oil change and stuff like that, make sure they're reliable, because if it goes down out there, we're in a spot of bother.
And how do you find small community living?
Oh, I love it. I love it. I'm made for it. I really am. I just like how close we've got mentioned before earlier in the conversation. Just family. That's all it is. I thrive on it.
I love you because you go around and you're like checking what everyone's doing in the evenings. Like, you just know when you're around, it's like, oh, Joe, it's if you're watching a film or if you're in the lounge or whatever, you're just coming around like checking what's going on. So yeah, I definitely think that suits you a lot. What's your plans for the future?
I think south again. I really do. Oh, I want to try and get on exploration yachts that come around Antarctica, explore Antarctica, stuff like that. I think they're right up my street, but we'll see.
And what is it about Antarctica, now that you've been here, other than what your captain said about magnificent views, what has Antarctica brought to you? It's
crazy because when I first applied for this job, I thought it would just be gen meching, but it's so much more. The skills I've gained from this job are incredible, so diverse, and something that I never really expected myself to be doing. Just like going out on winter trips, learning how to put tents up in the middle of Antarctica, stuff like, and that's just the basic stuff. Snowboarding, skidoo driving, just like learning how to fix such vast types of machinery, and then learning so much through the science talks and stuff that I put on basically weekly during summer. I just never thought I'd have that opportunity, and that's what's made it stick. It's silly how good this place is.
What is the greatest challenge that you've had to overcome being here?
I think the winter, when it went really dark, I thought that would have been a much bigger challenge than what it was. I was alright during it. When the sun came back, that was a bit difficult, sleeping and stuff. But the biggest challenge, snow. When it's, do you know when you're walking around and all of a sudden you're knee deep?
Yeah, like, how did I get here again?
Yeah.
Or refuelling. Is that quite a difficult challenge? So basically you have to fill all the buildings up with
after aviation turbine fuel. So we get in the D4, the dozer, affectionately known as Carol, attached to a Bowser, fill it up and drive it around station. And at times that has been just stuck all the time, but that's one of the skills, like, now I know where to attach a dozer for a tow strap. I never thought I'd know that, but then again, everyone being such a close family, everyone's just a radio call away, like, oh, I'm stuck on the hill again, come give you a tow. It was good, it is challenging at some points when it's blowing 40 knots, snow in your face, and you stand outside like, oh, damn it. But it's really fun. It is really fun. Looking back on it, it's good. In the moment,
you're like cursing the weather and the place that you're in, and you're like, I hate Antarctica. But then actually you realise that this is such
and then
an
you wake up to
and rare opportunity
to every single view that it has to offer.
What's your favourite animal?
Weddell seals.
Why?
I like spots. They're just great, aren't they? They just have a little gander at you. The massive eyes and
what a nice play. Fending for themselves.
Just like every single one of us.
Well, Joe, thanks.
Yeah,
really good chat.
Bother. Yeah, thank you for having me.
Thank you so much. Is there anything else you want to say?
Come to Antarctica. Everyone that listens to this, because you must have an interest, so do it.
Thanks everyone for tuning in to another episode of the Ice World podcast with Joe Clay. I thoroughly enjoyed my conversation with him and found it very amusing. I hope that lots of you within more technical jobs are able to access this episode and maybe it will give you a different perspective. Reporting in the media from Antarctic stations naturally focus on science stories. This may conceal the fact that we actually have a higher ratio of support staff to scientists on some of the larger research stations, such as Rothera. It's thanks to people like Joe, who maintain the generators, that we are able to even think about conducting science in one of the most isolated places on the planet. Just a few clarifications on some of the terminology that was used during that episode. Gen Mech is a generator mechanic. That's what Joe and his colleague Greg were. They service and maintain the generators. Gen Shed is the place that they worked. It's not actually a shed, it's a room where there's 4 different generators. Something else that was really cool that unfortunately we didn't cover in the podcast, Joe and Greg were in charge and responsible for maintaining the chainsaw, which we as divers used to access and cut dive holes during the winter. Joe Clay is now working with me in Cambridge at the British Antarctic Survey. He is the power generation engineer, which means that he is the lead on everything to do with generators and fuel on the Antarctic stations. See you next time for another episode of the Ice World podcast, where we'll talk to Stu McManus, the Rothera wintering electrician.